Thank you, Taoiseach. Over the last number of days in the media and indeed elsewhere, there have been very serious allegations made in relation to NAMA and how NAMA is operating. And my colleague Senator Darragh O'Brien has also come in possession of material which he has spoken about in the Shannon and which he will be sending to the Gardaí. And I understand, Taoiseach, from media reports also that a dossier on the behaviour of a previous employee has been sent to the Garda Commissioner. Now, very serious allegations have been made, Taoiseach, and I think they go to the heart of confidence and trust in an extremely important body that is acting on the taxpayers' behalf. So certainty and confidence and trust in that body is essential and is my only remit here this morning. One of the allegations being made, Taoiseach, and I think it needs urgent clarification from NAMA, is that the entire file in relation to a person whose loan book was with NAMA was sent to a partner in a major global property company who was acting on behalf of that person's rival in advance of a major high-profile court case. Now, that would be a shocking revelation if true, or a fact if it was proven to be true. And I think it can't be left hanging there, Taoiseach. And it needs an urgent response. Did this happen or did it not? Or was it just one isolated case? Or are there other such cases? It's also been asserted, Taoiseach, that property valuations were manipulated. And that's extremely serious. A person quoted in the material is saying there were perfectly good loans written down on the banks so as to keep the NAMA dream alive. I was the one they relied on to get the massive low valuations. I destroyed people with these valuations, unquote. Now again, Taoiseach, that's extremely serious and can't left go unanswered for any period of time. It's extremely important that we get a very robust response from the government and the Minister for Finance in relation to this. And my final point, Taoiseach, is the relationship between the Department of Finance and NAMA needs to be clarity, and clarity needs to be articulated very quickly about that. Now, there were freedom of information requests tabled to the Department of Finance back in August 2012. Only 6 out of 19 documents were given in response to that request. It's currently with the Appeal Commissioner, the remainder. Now, Taoiseach, you know from that correspondence we learned that Barclay Brothers, for example, were in contact with the Department of Finance in relation to loan books that were with the IBRC. Now, Taoiseach, if we're to have confidence and trust, I would ask you to say to the Department of Finance, withdraw any objections they have to releasing all of that material into the public domain to show they have nothing to hide and that we're operating in this country in terms of the Department of Finance, NAMA, and all those key institutions above board. Would you give me the assurance, Taoiseach, to enable that to happen?
Sure, please. Well, to give the assurance that the government take this very seriously. Yesterday I answered questions in regard to this matter, and I confirmed to you that the Gardaí were investigating a complaint in respect of an individual, and that allegations were made about a second, in regard to a second individual, which Gardaí had not come back to NAMA about. Let me say to you, Deputy Martin, that the Minister for Justice this morning was advised by the Garda Commissioner that there was contact between NAMA and the Garda Síochána earlier this year in regard to another former employee. I think people know that. The Garda are awaiting a statement of complaint and supporting documentation. The Garda Commissioner also indicated that he has directed a senior officer to liaise with NAMA to ensure that all these matters of concern are fully pursued. I also understand that the Public Accounts Committee is in contact with NAMA about the investigations that are underway, and that NAMA intends to and will assist them insofar as possible within the constraints of the ongoing Garda investigations. Clearly, where there are allegations made that are of a criminal nature, the Gardaí obviously are the appropriate authority to carry out the investigations here. You're aware, Deputy Martin, that in respect of freedom of information requests, the Minister in any particular department neither has sight nor function in what is agreed by the Freedom of Information Officer in each department to allow for release, and that's why you have an appeal system to the Information Commissioner. So it's not for the Minister to direct a Freedom of Information officer in any individual department what and what not to release. Clearly, the Appeals Commissioner makes an independent decision in that regard. I'd also say to you that you make a serious point there about an allegation of property valuations being manipulated. I put on the record yesterday that NAMA requires that the sale of all loans and of all properties and other assets securing those loans is conducted on a competitive, fully open market basis by suitably qualified and competent agents. And in all of these events, Deputy Martin, NAMA insists on independent valuations of all assets. If an allegation is made of manipulation of valuations, NAMA themselves insist and require an independent valuation of all loans, assets, or properties that are dealt with. Clearly, also, as I said yesterday, a summary of a marketing campaign is undertaken. A list of all the parties who expressed interest in the loan or the real estate were contacted during the marketing campaign.
Thank you.
A recommendation to accept the term of the purchaser's offer is as the best offer reasonably priced. The confirmation that the agent has reviewed the purchaser's confirmation, and also a statement disclosing any commercial relationship between the agent, the debtor, the purchaser, or the purchaser's ultimate beneficial owners in the past 5 years, or how any actual or perceived conflict of interest was managed during any sales process. Now, I know that when the legislation was introduced in the beginning, the NAMA were exempted from freedom of information requests by your own government.
Deputy Martin.
Taoiseach, first of all, in relation to the issue of clarity and in terms of the freedom of information, the only reason it's with the Appeal Commissioner is because someone has objected to releasing all of the files in relation to that particular request. And the people who have objected to that is the Department of Finance. And only 6 out of 19 documents were released. And I think the entire material should now be released in the interest of transparency and to generate confidence. Because why were key, and there may be a very good reason, I'm not casting aspersions on anybody here, Taoiseach, but I do think it's important that we have certainty, trust and confidence. And when you see a Department of Finance withholding documentation which could relate to overtures or representations made by a very significant player to the department, then there's a suggestion, there's an appearance that people are hiding something or covering up something and are not fully utilising freedom of information, are utilising freedom of information to prevent material from getting out,
please, thank you.
And so forth. Now, I think you said to the Gardaí are awaiting information from NAMA in relation to this. How long are the Gardaí awaiting information from NAMA, and when do NAMA expect to be in a position to fully cooperate with NAMA? Taoiseach, the third point I would make, you talked about the Controller and Auditor General. The Controller and Auditor General is on record as saying he doesn't have the capacity in terms of staff or whatever to audit the NAMA, given it's such a big behemoth and so forth. So, in terms of that's a very key issue for us. There's a 10% turnover of staff in NAMA, which is in itself is causing significant issues for the agency. But does the state actually have the capacity to audit NAMA?
Thank you.
Does it have the personnel to do it and the sufficient numbers to do it? And that's a key point, Taoiseach, again, in our attempts to generate confidence and trust in the organisation and in what it's doing, which ultimately is about the taxpayer.
Thank you. Sorry. Please. Taoiseach, thank you.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Minister Deputy Martin is well aware of the legislation that deals with the freedom of information system. Ministers in government do not have. No, but is it the department or is it the Freedom of Information Officer you're talking about? Every department has a Freedom of Information Officer, and that person deals exclusively with Freedom of Information requests. There is no contact between a Freedom of Information Officer in any department and the Minister or Minister of State of the day. They make their decisions independently. And the law also says quite clearly that there's an appeals process which is also independent. So I think it mightn't be a good idea, Deputy Martin, to sort of get into the business of ministers stating what should or should not be. That's why you have. No, to be honest with you, I don't know the information that was released. I don't have access to it. I don't have any contact with NAMA. So I think, you know, if a topical issue goes down to the Minister for Finance, he may have more information to give than I have, because I don't have contact.
Thank you.
I don't have contact with NAMA, obviously.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
And clear insofar as freedom of information officers and their responsibilities are concerned, as is the situation insofar as the appeals is now, in respect of the
we're over time.
In respect of the fact that the Minister for Justice confirmed that the Garda Commissioner was advised by the Garda Commissioner this morning that there was contact between NAMA and the Garda Síochána earlier this year in regard to another former employee. That investigation is ongoing, Deputy Martin, will conclude whenever it concludes. Now, the second thing is that more recently, in August of this year, the Garda Síochána received a separate complaint from a firm of solicitors acting on behalf of a client. And that related to the alleged disclosure of information by NAMA. The Gardaí, Deputy Martin, have been awaiting receipt of further documentation from the solicitors. The Gardaí will, of course, obviously fully investigate that if and when that information is sent to them from the solicitors. So I can't tell you how long that's going to take or what information is involved there either. So that's the story. But I agree with you. You can't have a situation where these allegations would have any substance or be true in fact. So the one complaint is being followed through. Information was received in respect of a second complaint, but the Gardaí have not been in contact with NAMA about that, and obviously they'll follow it through if and when that's actually presented. It is a matter of serious concern and serious import, given that this is one of the largest portfolio companies in the world, actually.